Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Pac-Manufactured, a series all about Pac-Man clones. In this episode we're looking at Pac-Man, that's what it's called. They didn't think up a clever name for it, unfortunately. But yeah, it's developed by Scathe. This was released in January of this year, 2017, for the Pico 8 Fantasy console, and this is a part of a game jam called the Tiny TV Game Jam. The idea being to sort of create sort of little monitors or cabinets and things, and basically create games within those. So yeah, like I say, this has a little 3D sort of Pac-Man-esque cabinet that you can muck around with at first, but once you click sort of shift on the keyboard, it enters a credit into the machine, and then you can start playing a version of Pac-Man in a very, very tiny resolution. So yeah, your Pac-Man is basically just a little pixel. There's only 2 ghosts on screen because the playing field is so cramped. It would have been incredibly difficult with any more than 2 ghosts. So that's more of a compromise due to the actual resolution of the game. But yeah, still a very surprisingly well-made Pac-Man clone. So instead of collecting pellets, what they've done is you basically collect all of the sort of like dark blue space and turn it into black, and that sort of signifies the pellets that you're eating, essentially. Just because there's not enough resolution for there to actually be pellets in those spaces, because the Pico 8's resolution is so low. And that's done on purpose, because the whole point of the Pico 8 is it's sort of emulating like the retro consoles of yesteryear. But yeah, so the power pills are in sort of each of the 4 corners. The 2 ghosts appear at the top left and top right corner. That's their spawn point. You obviously, when you use the power pills, they turn blue, and then they're vulnerable to being eaten. There is a scoring feature, but you don't actually see it on screen at this whilst you're playing, because there's just not enough space for it. So your score is presented to you when you use all your lives. Your lives are displayed on the right of the screen by 3 yellow dots to begin with, and then, like I say, as you lose lives, they disappear. So yeah, it's very simplistic, but it actually functions exactly as you'd expect a Pac-Man game to. And even though it's grid-based, we don't have any of that weird collision where, like, if you turned sort of left on a wall, you'd stop, sort of thing, mid movement down a corridor. You actually have the same momentum that you would in a traditional Pac-Man game, which is very nice. So it plays exactly as you'd expect it to. There aren't any gimmicks of its own. It's, like I say, it's a very simplistic version of Pac-Man, but it does work really well. It's it's an amazing feat of engineering almost to actually get Pac-Man to work in such a small space. So I've got to respect it for that. And one of the things that it does, even though it doesn't have abilities and gimmicks in that regard, it does have a very interesting thing in that every single maze is completely procedurally generated, so you're getting a different maze every stage. So it does have, at least some replayability, because you're always going to get something different every time you play it. I mean, there's only so much it can do in such a small space, but at the same time, it is, again, an amazing feat of engineering to have it procedurally generate stages in such a small space. So there you go, that's Pac-Man, developed by Scathe. Well worth checking out. You can play it for free on the Pico 8 sort of Lexa Waffle website. I've probably mispronounced that, but anyway, yeah, well worth checking out. Go and search for it. Yeah, cool little game.